Chapter 6, Episode 6 Official Visit to the Holy Land. Fourth day of the itinerary for the official visit to the Holy Land. The Empress and Falma's group continued their carriage ride while staying at an inn on the road led by the temple's carriage. The road leading to the Holy Land has been well maintained as part of a major public works project. The road is good and the carriage ride is relatively comfortable. Since it was extremely rare for the Empress to pay a visit without leaving the imperial capital, the people of the territory flocked along the route to see the Empress even from a distance. Respected by her subjects, the Empress showed her emperor's personality. However, the journey did not go smoothly. On the way to the Holy Land, the carriage was stopped several times. On the first day, a large herd of sheep blocked the road and we had to wait half a day. We started this on the second day when we approached a straight road and encountered a landslide. There was a considerable amount of sand blocking the road. This time, since the group of the Empress companions was not accompanied by a mage with earth attribute and negative attribute, they had problems with the work, so Falma erased most of the earth and sand. Yesterday, an old woman with a high fever was found dead on a mountain road. Falma had no choice but to treat the old woman, who was still breathing. She had a contagious disease, so I treated her with antibiotics and took her to her family looking for her whereabouts. I also put out a medication for a few days. That night one of the drivers of the Empress's carriage collapsed, so Falma was called. Since it was a pulmonary thromboembolism, which seemed to be an economy-class syndrome, I managed to regain consciousness after thrombolytic therapy with low molecular weight heparin, an anticoagulant and tissue plasminogen activator. Afterwards, Falma gave him a continuous dose of heparin and advised the coachman and us not to sit in the same position for long and to do light stretching exercises during breaks. Hopefully nothing will happen today. With these thoughts, Falma rocked the carriage today as well. He took care of Clara, who was in a separate carriage and throwing up as she recalled, and read the student's report, somehow killing time. Still, is it all right? Take the medicine god staff back to the great temple. Anyway, it can't even be used in the temple. The Empress, bored with opening and closing the folding fan, asked Falma directly. Yes, she was right in front of Falma. As far as Falma was concerned, he shared a place with the Empress's carriage. I asked for a separate carriage, but there was no way I could refuse the Empress's invitation. Yes. Just a cane. Isn't it a medical stick? I will return the medicine god's staff, but it means that even if I return it, there will be no problem. You are really selfless. Do you want to return it or just take it? The Empress took a reluctant look at the medicine god's staff that had been kept in the sealed cosmetic case inside. It's a staff that the Empress can't use, so even if the Empress had it, it would only be a decoration. No, I'm not willing to let it go. I have a replacement, so it's fine. Even if it becomes a diplomatic problem, I will be in trouble. Now that I think about it, did you get a new staff? Show me. What is the name of this staff? The Empress seemed to have noticed that Falma was carrying a new staff at that time. I heard from Ellen that nobles always look at their opponents' wands and judge what kind of divine arts they use and how much skill they have. But the Empress was originally a Lohi. Seemed to be the kind of person who does this. I don't care about the pros and cons of a walking stick. After all, the wand craftsmen of the imperial city do not make wands with better performance than the Emperor's wands. However, it seems that even the Empress would be interested in the new cane that Falma specially made. Falma handed the wand to the Empress without being pushy. This cane, unlike the medicine god cane, can be held by anyone. A slender black cane with a damp sheen and elegance. The Empress also took it in her hand and stared at it intently. In other words, Jacques Shinso Multicore Veer 2.0 1147 Original Model First Edition. However, since he also has a sense of shame, I did not put it into words and gave him a safe answer. It's a stick that I made myself, but I haven't decided on a name yet. Is it just a stick? It can use divine arts with 4 attributes in both offense and defense, has improved durability and ability to store divine power, and has inherited the functions of the Yakujin staff. Hey, that's messed up. How did you inherit the ability of the medicine god Cain? I took the information from the Yakujan staff. Huh? How did you do that? He didn't reveal anything, just laughed and said, I did many things. Here is a more detailed explanation of various things. Before taking it back to the Holy Land, Falma changed the wand and noticed that the handle of the wand could be disassembled. The surface layer of the Yakushan wand consisted of several layers of parts. And when I moved the top layer, there was a transparent crystal stone with an electronic circuit board-like engraving in the center. It seems that the staff of the medicine god is controlled by this board. Therefore, Falma pulled out the board piece, dug it out of the crystal at the bottom of the sacred spring, and mounted the board in a new wand that Falma had crafted himself. In order to keep the design as unobtrusive as possible and not be targeted by thieves, I asked a staff craftsman from a famous workshop in the Imperial City to create a simple and elegant design for the wand. The medicine god staff, which looked like an elegant glass staff, was very eye-catching, but the new staff had a typical design, so Falma liked it. Also, by rolling up the ID card and tucking it into the extra space of the stick, I was able to keep it flying. As a final touch, Solomon turned it into a cane with a sanctification chant, and a cane that could use divine arts with 4 attributes was created. The crystal stone at the bottom of the sacred spring contains the memories of the dead. Therefore, Solomon analyzed that it is special because it contains the memories of each magician of each of the 4 attributes of the divine arts. Falma did not even have knowledge of the 4 attribute divine arts, but he was able to make it look that way by combining things like material creation. As a result, a new multi-core staff was completed, equipped with 3 hidden treasure processing systems, which was an amalgamation of the staff ID card, the medicine god staff, and the cherished sword that Juliana had brought. When I tried to use the secret technique with the new wand, I was able to use it just like the medicine god wand, and of course the 4 attributes of the divine arts as well as the plague shrine were activated without any problems. Also, this wand has the properties of a precious sword, so it absorbs a lot of Falma's divinity and can also be used as a countermeasure against invisibility. If the core of the treasure is the computing center for the divinity transformation, the more cores the better. Let's collect other treasure cores and install them in different ways. I greedily made many slots so that other cores can be installed. If we collect the treasures scattered all over the world and collect the data centers, we might be able to do some things. When she thought that Falma was interested in improving the wand, he was not good at keeping the same thing in the same condition for the rest of his life, and he always wanted to improve his tools. I will let you know, Your Majesty. At this point, the Empress's chamberlain came to report to the carriage in awe. The bridge on the route has collapsed. Yesterday it was possible to pass through without any problems, but I am very sorry that it collapsed some time ago. We are considering a safe reroute as soon as possible. Again. It's just as you expected. The road on which the Empress was to travel should have been secured by the advance team so that there was no danger in advance. And so the treasurer in charge of security management seemed to be sweating in vain in the face of sudden events. Besides, it's because of the daily disasters. Again, mishaps don't happen often. Any further delay affects the schedule of the planned meeting with Pius. In this situation, it does. Falma finally harbors doubts about the rare accidents that happen in quick succession. It's a pity. While I was guiding His Majesty, I carefully prayed for safety on the way. Chief Priest Kum, who leads the group, also came to apologize to the Empress for the delay in the itinerary. Kum looked at the Empress's mood, but the Empress was neither sullen nor reproachful. Then your education and faith are probably lacking. Will. Kum was impressed when the Empress said a few words. As he watched from the sidelines, Falma thought that perhaps the atmosphere of distrust toward the temple had been conveyed. I wonder if a bridge can collapse so easily. Did you mean the pillars were physically destroyed? Or was it a suspension bridge? After Kum left, Falma began analyzing in the carriage. No, in particular, it didn't rain. This bridge is vital, so it's hard to imagine repairs and inspections being done diligently. Juliana, aware of the bridge's existence as a route to the Holy Land, also has a grim face. Then the carriage stopped, and Clara came out of the next carriage and said a disturbing word. This is an unexpected disaster. Unexpected? Clara-san, you didn't expect the carriage to stop in this accident? Clara shook her head as if Falma was uncomfortable with what Clara had said. She had a pretty high hit rate for travel-related mishaps. It was odd that it came unexpectedly in succession. Can't you predict a disaster that you can solve yourself? If Clara's prophecy goes wrong and she doesn't suspect the danger, then there's little point in accompanying her as a pilot to the new continent. Was it because Falma had forcibly opened Clara's veins, or would it have been better to close them a little more in view of her precognitive ability? While Falma was looking for things to think about, the words that came back from Clara were surprising. I can read accidents and disasters caused by natural disasters and the fates of people with a fair amount of accuracy, she said. You can't read disasters caused by people. I understand, Falma agreed. It's dangerous to take it with a grain of salt, but Clara's opinion is helpful in distinguishing man-made disasters from natural disasters. In any case, wasting time is unacceptable, Falma thought, and confirmed it with the driver of the carriage. Do we have to go down to the valley for a detour? Yes, it will be a detour. I'm changing the direction of the carriage now, so I'll pick you up from the back. Falma wants to get to the Holy Kingdom as soon as possible and then back to the pharmacy and the university. If the schedule is delayed, family members and the pharmacy staff will worry. I have to cancel my university lectures. It was not the time to get stuck. No, I will make it possible to move forward without retreating. Falma got out of the carriage and stood in front of the cliff with a deep valley in front of him. He goes into the abyss without hesitation. When Falma stepped off the edge of the cliff, he thought he would soon fall, but a majestic ice bridge formed in the air where he stepped, and every time he took a step toward the opposite shore, the bridge was ready. The ice bridge also had a parapet. The Empress, who had opened the carriage window to see what Falma was doing, finally began to laugh. It is a tremendous divine art. A divine art that can be woven without chance is magnificent. What Falma did was far from destroying the common sense of divine arts. Solomon and Juliana also looked at each other in disgust. The chief priest Kam, who accompanied us from the imperial capital, and the accompanying priests and holy knights rubbed their eyes and were speechless. The form of the technique is determined by the operator. It was a lost ancient art. Falma, who was focused on building the bridge, didn't even notice their reaction and smiled at the other side of the ice bridge he had finally crossed. It's done. The carriage is sliding. Could you put some sand on it? Huh? Yes. But is the strength okay? If horses can pass, people can cross. No problem. According to Falma's instructions, Solomon and others using the divine arts of earth attributes spread a layer of sand with divine arts. After confirming the strength by running a carriage horse to the corner of the bridge, several carriages and the accompanying cavalry crossed the bridge of ice without difficulty. Apart from the carriage, people crossed on foot. Even those whose faces twitched with fear when they thought they would fall breathed a sigh of relief when they finished crossing. Then, since everyone has finished crossing, let's extinguish this bridge. It's dangerous for people to cross it when the ice melts halfway across. Falma tried to extinguish the ice bridge after guiding some ropes to the opposite shore so that the craftsmen could easily build a new bridge. But before Falma could get her hands on it, flames shot from behind, licked across the bridge and melted the ice bridge in an instant. Overwhelmed by the column of fire that appeared on the ice bridge, Falma looked back. The flames were emitted by the Empress. The Empress poked her shoulder with her walking stick. "You are amazing, Your Majesty. If not for His Majesty's divine technique, I would have been in trouble." When Falma praised the Empress snorted, swung her staff once, and sat on her waist. "Hey, you're bored. If anything stands in our way, I will use this fire to burn it out myself." As she said these words, the Empress turned a sharp gaze on the group of people in the temple and smiled meaningfully. The priests were all flattered with horrified expressions on their faces, saying things like, "as expected of His Majesty." Perhaps the Empress's restraint worked, and from that day on, the Empress's group suffered no suspicious disasters and reached the Holy Land on time. "At last we will enter the Holy Land," the driver told Falma and the others while he was full of tension. The scenery of the Holy Land, which was officially welcomed by the front, was magnificent. The majestic appearance of huge religious buildings stood side by side, all the roofs were covered with snow, and a mysterious silver-white Holy Land that was one with ice and snow appeared. While many of the people accompanying him were moved by the pilgrimage to the Holy Land, Falma seemed unimpressed. "Because, I guess it's shiny, I don't like the ground." While worrying about this, Falma got out of the carriage and entered the Holy Land, and as expected, all the buildings reacted to Falma's divine power and emitted pale light. The Empress's servants were worried that the magic circle had been activated, and they all pulled out their staffs at once. As the Sandfluve bodyguards drew their wands, the Holy Knights on the Holy Kingdom side also readied their wands. Falma waved them off and excused himself. "It's not a magic circle, everyone. Please put away your wands. You don't have to be vigilant. What's the glow? Is it your fault?" The Empress witnesses an impossible phenomenon and cries out. "I think so," admitted Falma in a low voice, and the Empress was at a loss for words as she stared at Falma with a frightened expression on her face. The priests seemed surprised by the incident in the great temple, but basically pretended not to see it. Falma suspected that he had been told beforehand to take care of it, with nothing on the surface. In the uncomfortable atmosphere, a group of high-ranking priests approached from across the street. A striking man, dressed in a luxurious white robe and carrying a golden staff, stood before the Empress and prayed for her long journey. Falma felt an unusual atmosphere towards this man. Yes, he was a man with a mysterious presence. Elizabeth II, who came all the way here. This is His Holiness Pius. The Empress greets at the courtesy. For the first time, Falma saw the Empress bow to someone, even if it was just a formality. Even the Empress, who acted like the ruler of the world, seemed to have someone she cared about. Falma suspected that Pius, who gave the Empress the imperial crown, was a cleric of the highest rank among the nobles who manipulated divine arts, and that he must be higher in the hierarchy than the Empress. After several hours of rest, the Empress put on her formal clothes, and Falma and the others cleaned themselves in the bath and prepared. At the border of the Holy Land, the priests raised the flag of the Holy Land and the flag of the Empire. And at the side of the road a band of musicians held a great welcoming parade, and the Empress was kindly treated as a guest. In the large square in the center of the great temple, a welcoming ceremony and a great ritual are held, and the Empress gives a speech about her visit to the priests of the Holy Land, to which Pius responds and applauds. At the end of the meeting, we shook hands and exchanged souvenirs. On the surface, it looked like peaceful diplomacy between friendly countries. After the end of the long series of rituals, Falma, who wanted to be at the Empress's side as a private pharmacist, was exhausted. Juliana and Solomon had disguised themselves so carefully that the priests did not seem to suspect them. By the time I was invited to the banquet of the Great Supper hosted by the Great Temple, it was already late at night. Since it is a celebration of a religious event, the Empress is dressed in a pure white robe and a silver imperial crown. A traditional sacrament was celebrated in a solemn atmosphere. The food is hot. The Empress experienced a culture shock from the steaming soup. Pius smiled wryly while enjoying wine. "I wonder if you usually get cold food, His Majesty the Emperor." "It takes time to taste the poison, so thanks to that I was able to survive until today. Warm food is surprising. Why don't you try it?" "I won't. But you have good reason to be suspicious of us." As Pius urged him with confidence, the accompanying taster analyzed it with orthodox divine arts and ate it to make sure there was no poison in the bowl. Pius and the Empress finally began to eat, and the lower class filled their bowls with water and put the food in their mouths. Falma, however, let out a small sigh before eating the food. Although it is no different from other human meals, I am the only one who is served. Inwardly, Falma did not know how to deal with it. What was heaped up was not a deadly poison, but a traditional medicinal herb extract that had been passed down in this world. It also contained some that were used as sleeping pills. Falma secretly erased the problematic component for the time being. Nevertheless, his body is immune to poisons, so working with the drugs on his own plate seemed like a waste of time. I don't know what you mean. I wonder if you used it as a confession pill. What were you trying to get me to say? By the way, Falma wants to say that there is no truth serum. In any case, Falma managed to avoid the curious looks that poured from nowhere, and without being particularly intrusive, he devoted himself to the task of bringing the poison-free food to his mouth. Yakushi-sama, lately my heart has been beating a lot and I wonder if something is wrong. A tipsy young priest asked Falma for a health consultation, so I responded appropriately. Oh, you seem to be drinking too much alcohol. Your liver is suffering, too. I think you should stop drinking. If you need it, I can give you some medication. Is that so? Thank you. The cardinal priest did not even approach Falma. But the relatively low-ranking priest, who may or may not have known about Falma's situation, innocently approached him after the meal was over and it was time for tea. As long as the appearance of the diplomatic banquet was still patched up, Falma would hold on to his position as the Empress's chief apothecary. During dinner, Pius and the Empress reaffirmed the friendly attitude of the two countries. In the middle of the meeting, the two countries did not bring up the story of Juliana or the numerous incidents in which the temple manipulated Falma. The Empress was peaceful all the time. Falma thought the Empress was diplomatic, where she washed away the past, shook hands with her right hand and clenched fists with her left. As long as the temple is looking for a way out, there is nothing to provoke. After the party was over, it was time to go to bed. After the banquet, the head priest of the imperial city came to greet the Empress. After that, he also approached Falma. Thank you for your hard work during the long journey. Today I will be leaving. Thank you. Falma thanked him sincerely. Then interrupted the story at that moment. May I have an informal meeting with His Holiness Pius tomorrow morning? I understand. It would be rude if I overslept because I was tired, so can I come in the afternoon? Could you make arrangements in the morning? Falma understood that it was the time for the slow-acting truth pill served during the meal to take effect. It's like falling into the hand of the enemy, but I think there's a plan on the other side, so I readily agreed. I think you want me to say something, Pius. Now go to sleep, Falma. Let's go to the bedroom. After left, the Empress pulled Falma's hand. Could it be? She's in the same room as the Empress. Falma rolled her eyes. And then Falma would respectfully decline. You have my room and I will sleep there. What are you talking about? You should never have time to be alone during your stay in the Holy Land. However, we will be accompanied by the Holy Knights who will escort us, so there is no need to worry. Although Falma doesn't think her protection can be relied upon. The Empress bent down a little, met Falma's gaze and said as if to hold it back. You use extra-human divine arts and your divine power is far from human. There is no one who can win with a direct attack. If you are surprised and incapacitated, there is nothing left to protect you. Neutralization. The poison that was just spilled would have been dangerous if it had worked. I appreciate your consideration. If it's pure guide warfare, I'm invincible. The Empress makes a determined face and winks. From Falma's point of view, it looked like he wanted to be openly praised, so I took it and said, well, as expected from His Majesty. You are reliable. But if the opponent knows that too, I don't think he will bring it into pure divine warfare. Knowing or not that the Empress would be sleeping at Falma's, Solomon and Juliana carefully prepared a magical formation for crime prevention and an anti-god sealing spell during the dinner party in the room where the Empress was staying. a divine art that prevents intruders from entering the room, and a magic that destroys the staff as soon as the staff is used. When it's lifted, it means the alarm goes off. Yes, goodbye, Juliana told me. Therefore, it will buy you time. The Empress yawned and called a maid to put on her pajamas. Falma also changed and got ready for bed. And she pressed Falma down on the bed as if reaching for a pillow and clung tightly to him. In the middle of the night, the Empress would say things like, "You belong to me," or "I don't know who you're talking to." "But you're disrespectful." Falma could feel the Empress's warm body temperature, and he couldn't help but wonder, "Who the hell do you think you are?" That night there was nothing, probably because the Empress was in close proximity at 0 distance. They were never attacked at night. I have a feeling that Falma was taken aback when he thought he was being overly cautious. However, when he opened the bedroom door, there were signs that someone other than the Empress's servant had come during the night, and it was clear that he had not been overly concerned. "It's a good morning. Why don't we have training in the divine arts before breakfast? Your skills in the divine arts will be emphasized." Falma woke up early, but the Empress's morning was also early. "Falma told me not to do divine arts training, so let's go for a walk." From the early morning when I went for a walk in the garden of the Holy Land with the Empress accompanied by a large number of vassals, Clara came running through the large garden. With low blood pressure, she turns into a living corpse in the morning, but her blood phase changes unusually. "Yakushi-sama." I stuck my head in the snow. I could see the entire contents of the skirt because it was eye-catching. Clara's face turned bright red at the sudden event and she hastily sat down on the snow. Clara's underwear was a white drawer. The vassals seemed uncomfortable and immediately turned their faces away. After a few seconds of being frozen in shame, Clara jumped up. "Today I had a dream that something bad happened to Yakushi-sama." "Good morning, Clara-san. Calm down first and take a deep breath. Suha. Now it's cold, my mouth is freezing." Clara closed her eyes tightly and put her hood back on. Every gesture was like that of a small animal. "Well, is this the worst day of the trip for me?" Yes, I'll just spend my time as usual. Whether you're in the room or outside, there's always danger. Thank you for telling me. Today is the critical moment. I wonder what it is." Falma braced herself. The Empress also made a grim face and squeezed Falma's hand. "He seemed to want to tell me not to leave my side." After returning to the temple, a sumptuous breakfast was served. By breakfast time, not only were the plates of the Empress and her retainers empty, but so were Falma's meals. After the meal, there was some time to relax, and Falma and the Empress were invited to a secret meeting arranged by Pius. None of the lower-ranking priests knew where to hold the meeting. The cardinal priest with the highest status came to pick up Falma and the others. The meeting was attended by Empress Falma, several chamberlains and several holy knights who served as the bodyguards. Among them, Solomon also dressed up and slipped in. Falma released the spell attached to the medicine god's crest and the seal that held him back. "You need to be prepared in case something happens. When the seal is broken, the shadow disappears, and I feel like I've become a little transparent, but I can't afford to worry about little things. It's time. Let us take you to another holy land. I'm afraid the meeting place is underground, but please walk. Is the high priest waiting at the end of the world? Why is it inconvenient on earth?" As the Empress asked cautiously, "It's not a dangerous place," and opened the large door that led into the dark cellar. Falma and the others entered the depths of the mysterious underground temple. Photo shoot. Falma pulled out his smartphone and took a photo of the magnificent door for the record. Falma was so surprised at that time that he wanted to scream. This is because the smartphone received weak Wi-Fi.